Welcome back to From the Shadow to the Light, the podcast that delves deep into the profound journey from darkness to enlightenment. Hi, I'm Debbie Gill, your guide on this transformative journey of profound discovery and personal evolution. In today's episode, we fearlessly step into Chapter 2, The Invisible Child, peeling back the layers of my childhood experiences and the emotions that shaped my path. Together, we'll explore themes of invisibility, grief, and the masks we wear to survive. Through this, I hope to illuminate how our earliest wounds continue to shape our lives and how we can begin to heal. Grief and repressed memories. Close your eyes and journey back with me. I was 6 years old when my parents told me we were leaving Michigan to move back to Delaware. The thought of leaving my friends devastated me, and only after saying my heartbreaking goodbyes did I realize just how much they had meant to me. Yet, amid my sorrow, there was a bright spot. I was going to be a big sister. The idea filled me with excitement, giving me something to look forward to in our new home. I remember vividly helping my mother decorate the nursery, eagerly preparing for my baby brother's arrival. But just days before Christmas, our world shattered. On December 21st, my father called home with the devastating news. Michael, my baby brother, had just died 11 hours after being born. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The news felt like a sucker punch to my gut, stealing my breath away. Tears streamed down my face, but no one asked how I felt. The grief, the anger, the unbearable loss. I had no outlet for any of it. The sadness was too immense to carry, so I buried it deep inside, locking it away where no one could see. Nearly 50 years later, a memory surfaced that I had long repressed. I hated my father because he wouldn't let me attend Michael's small service at the cemetery. But in my Catholic upbringing, hatred, especially toward a parent, was considered a mortal sin. The shame of that was too much for my 6-year-old self to handle, so I shoved it into my subconscious, where it remained hidden for decades. It only resurfaced after deep inner work when an unexpected trigger, Donald Trump, sent me into a rage. It wasn't about him. It was about my father, Donald, who had idolized him. My father even had a Trump bobblehead, a small but powerful symbol of an unhealed wound. Once I made that connection, I was no longer triggered. The anger had found its root, and in doing so, it lost its power. Think about a significant loss in your own life. How did you process the emotions surrounding it? Did you push them down, or were you able to express them? Have you ever been triggered by something seemingly unrelated, only to discover it was tied to a much deeper, unresolved wound? Invisibility and the masks we wear. Everything changed after Michael died. The loss of my baby brother wasn't just an event, it was a fracture, an invisible wound that reshaped my entire world. As the mix of anger and sorrow intensified within my 6-year-old heart, I found myself navigating a maze of confusion and isolation. The pain was unspoken, locked behind the walls of grief that no one dared to touch. No one talked about Michael. The nursery door was closed, a silent tomb of memories that were too painful to face. And my mother vanished into her own grief. She was there physically, but emotionally she was gone. The version of her that I had known, the one who had prepared for Michael with such excitement, had disappeared along with him. I lost my mother that day too. At 6 years old, I didn't have the words to describe what was happening, and no one was explaining it to me. I was left to make a sense of it on my own, to interpret the silence, the absence, the overwhelming weight of loss. Without the ability to process my feelings, I did what many children do. I buried them. I pushed them down so far that they seemed to disappear. But feelings don't just vanish, they resurface in different ways. Years later, I would come to understand that the unresolved grief of my childhood contributed to my struggles with anxiety and personality disorders, shaping the way I related to the world and to myself. The first time our shared pain was acknowledged wasn't until the following Christmas. As my mother unwrapped a sterling silver charm bracelet, I watched her tears fall onto the small charms. A boy, a girl, and an angel. It was a beautiful symbol, a silent tribute to the son she had lost. But as I sat there, watching her grief spill over for the first time, I wanted to scream, "But I'm here, Mommy. Can't you see me?" I hadn't just lost my brother. I had lost my place in my mother's world. So what do children do when their pain goes unacknowledged? When they cannot express their fears, grief, or confusion, especially when it's unintentional? They adapt. I learned how to be invisible in a way that made life easier for those around me. And to survive that invisibility, I put on masks. The strong mask was the first. If my mother couldn't carry the weight of life, then I would. I became the one who held it together, who didn't cry, who didn't need comfort. The caretaker mask followed. If my mother was lost in grief, then I would step in, trying to fill the emotional void she had left behind. The look good mask was essential, because if I appeared fine, smiled, and behaved, and made everything seem normal, then maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. And the people pleaser mask became my longest and most faithful companion. If I could keep everyone happy and be what they needed me to be, then maybe I wouldn't feel so alone. These masks were my protection. They allowed me to function in a world where I felt unseen. But the problem with masks is if that you wear them long enough, you begin to forget who you are underneath. As you reflect on this story, have there been times in your life when you felt like you had to hide your true feelings? How did you handle it? Do you recognize any of these masks in your own experiences? Which ones have you worn and why? Success strategies and the longing to be seen. From an early age, I carried an insatiable longing to be seen, to be recognized, and to have my talents and achievements acknowledged. It wasn't just a desire. It was a need, a desperate hunger that lived in my bones. Whether through academic success, athletic achievements, or creative pursuits, I sought approval from those around me, yearning for it to fill the void left by my invisibility at home. If I wasn't the best, the fastest, or the smartest, I withdrew, convinced that anything less than perfection meant I didn't matter. If I couldn't stand out, then what was the point? The wounded child, one of Carolyn Mace's 4 survival archetypes, had already begun to take root in me, but I had yet to recognize its hold. In my pursuit of validation, I unknowingly crafted a set of success strategies, each acting as a temporary salve over wounds I didn't yet have the tools to heal. The student that shined earlier in my life emerged as my first shield. Learning became my refuge, an escape from the emotional chaos of my home life. When the pain was too much, I could lose myself in books, equations, and the pursuit of knowledge. If I excelled academically, maybe, just maybe, I would be acknowledged. My thirst for learning was so intense that I often forfeited playing outside, even when the daylight was fading, just to bury myself in my homework. It wasn't simply about intelligence. It was about proving my worth, about controlling something in a life where so much felt uncontrollable. Then there was the athlete. Physical prowess became another way I could demand attention, and forced the world to take notice. It wasn't just that I was fast. I was the fastest runner in the entire school. Faster than the girls. Faster than the boys. It became an identity, a way to ensure I wasn't invisible. Decades later, through 23andMe, I discovered I carried the speed gene, ACTN3, common among elite power athletes. At the time, I didn't know genetics played a role, but I knew I had a gift, and that gift made people watch. It made me matter. And then there was the artist. Theater provided me yet another avenue to be seen. I tried out for Venus, the lead role in our class play, and I won. Standing on stage, all eyes on me, I basked in the attention, the applause, the validation. For those moments under the lights, I wasn't invisible. I was somebody. It was intoxicating. But the problem with building self-worth through success is that it's all conditional. My achievements became my identity. If I wasn't excelling, if I wasn't the best, then I felt like nothing at all. The drive to be seen propelled me forward, but it also kept me trapped in a cycle of performance where my value was tied to what I did, not to who I was. Reflect on moments in your life when you felt the deep need to be seen or acknowledged. What emotions arose when you were recognized? And what happened when you weren't? Consider the relationship between external validation and internal healing. Have you ever tied your self-worth to success, achievement, or recognition from others? How do you balance external acknowledgement with genuine self-acceptance? Reflecting on humiliation and self-esteem. In life, humiliation became a familiar companion, leaving lasting scars on my self-esteem. These moments weren't just fleeting embarrassments, but deeply etched into my identity, reinforcing the belief that I had to be perfect to be worthy. Two incidents clearly stand out, defining moments that whispered the lie that I was never enough. The first occurred during a pivotal moment in a track and field competition. As the anchor runner, I carried the weight of my team's expectations on my shoulders. Winning was not just about crossing the finish line first, it was about proving my worth. As I reached out to receive the baton, my mind raced ahead of my body, anticipation giving way to panic, and then disaster. The baton slipped through my fingers, crashing to the ground in a deafening silence that reverberated throughout my entire being. The shame was instantaneous, a crushing blow to my self-worth. The race was lost at that moment, and worse than my disappointment was the belief that I had let everyone down, my teammates, my coach, my entire school. As I picked up the baton and continued running, my legs felt like lead, my body moving forward. At the same time, my mind remained trapped in the humiliation of failure. But the sting of that moment was nothing compared to what happened during the CYO contest. I had already performed Venus twice, once at our school and another time at A.I. DuPont Children's Hospital, flawlessly. I knew my lines. I embodied the character for the first time. I felt entirely in control. But that control was an illusion, quickly shattered in a single instant. As I stood on stage, deeply engrossed in my character, my father decided to capture the moment with a Polaroid camera. The sudden flash burst through the darkness, blinding me for a moment. But it was enough. My mind went blank. The words I had rehearsed so many times, the performance I had perfected, dissolved into nothingness. I stood frozen, panic rising in my throat as an unbearable silence filled the room. I had failed in front of everyone. Paralyzed by fear and self-doubt, I could feel the weight of their judgment crashing down on me like an overwhelming wave. The shame was suffocating. At that moment, I only wanted to disappear. What had been a source of pride and recognition turned into a branding of failure, searing into my memory for decades. These experiences reinforced the fragile nature of my self-esteem and the relentless pursuit of perfection that haunted my every step. They repeatedly whispered the same message: if you fail, you are unworthy. And so, I lived my life trying to avoid failure at all costs, equating mistakes with humiliation rather than growth. But here's what I didn't understand then. Perfection is a prison. It keeps us locked in fear, afraid to take risks, try, and be human. The more I tried to outrun humiliation, the deeper I fell into its grasp. Recall a time when you experienced humiliation or failure in a public setting. How did this experience impact your self-esteem and sense of worth? How do you cope with the feelings of shame and inadequacy that followed? Were they left unresolved, or did you find a way to rewrite the story in your mind? Embracing the wounded child's impact. The presence of the wounded child loomed large throughout my life, leaving an indelible mark on my journey from the shadow into the light. It was there, silently shaping my longing to be seen, the masks I wore, and the relentless pursuit of external validation. Every moment of seeking, every attempt to prove my worth, every silent plea for acknowledgement, it was all rooted in the wounds left by childhood loss and emotional neglect. I didn't understand it then, but the pain of invisibility and the unexpressed grief formed the foundation of my identity. The wounded child archetype casts a long shadow over my quest for recognition. I chased achievements, believing that they would finally make me feel whole, believing that if I accomplished enough, succeeded enough, or shined brightly enough, someone would finally see me. But beneath those fleeting moments of validation, the unhealed wounds festered, leaving me vulnerable to waves of insecurity, self-doubt, and the fear of never being enough. Looking back at the strategies I employed to navigate this emotional landscape, I now recognize their dual nature. The student, the athlete, the artist, each role provided me with temporary relief from the deeper pain of unmet emotional needs. They gave me structure, direction, and a sense of control in a world where I often felt powerless. But they also masked the more profound truth. I wasn't chasing knowledge, speed, or applause. I was chasing worth. The student buried herself in learning, not just for the sake of knowledge, but because it was a way to feel like I mattered. The athlete ran faster than anyone else, not just to win, but to ensure she wasn't overlooked. The artist sought the spotlight, not just to perform, but to fill the emptiness of being unseen. Each success strategy kept the pain at bay for a while, but eventually I had to face the truth. Validation from others was a mirage. No amount of external achievement could heal the wounds that had been carved into my heart as a child. The echoes of past humiliations and failures reverberated through my psyche, eroding the fragile foundation of self-worth I had built upon the approval of others. I had spent so many years running from the pain, but pain, like a shadow, does not disappear simply because we refuse to look at it. It follows us, waiting until we are ready to turn toward it. And then, somewhere in the depths of self-exploration, a glimmer of hope emerged, a beacon of healing and self-discovery. I realized that embracing the wounded child within me was not an act of surrender to the past, but an act of reclamation. I had spent so long trying to escape her, when what she truly needed was for me to stop running, turn around, and hold her. Through deep inner work, I began to untangle the knots of my past, to sit with my pain instead of numbing it, to ask myself the questions I had always hoped others would ask me. How do you feel? What do you need? In embracing the wounded child, I found the power to rewrite my story, not dictated by external validation, but by self-acceptance and authenticity. I no longer needed to prove my worth. I had always been worthy. And so I stand at the threshold of transformation, carrying the lessons learned from my wounded self, and acknowledging its presence, I reclaim the power to rewrite my narrative, to transcend the limitations of the past, and step boldly into the light of self-acceptance and healing. Reflect on how the presence of the wounded child has influenced your own journey. How have its shadows shaped your perception and self of others? Consider the masks you wear and the strategies you employ to cope with unmet needs and unexpressed emotions. Are these mechanisms serving as temporary band-aids or pathways to deeper healing? How can you cultivate a greater self-validation and acceptance, recognizing that true healing begins from within? As we draw the curtain on this episode, let us carry forth the wisdom gleaned from the journey of the invisible child. We pave the way for profound transformation and healing by honoring our past experiences and embracing the shadows that linger within. The stories we tell ourselves about our pain shape our reality, but when we hold space for the parts of us that have been unseen, unheard, and unacknowledged, we begin to rewrite those narratives with compassion and understanding. May we cultivate a more profound sense of compassion for ourselves and others, recognizing that beneath the veneer of strength and success lies the tender heart of the wounded child, yearning to be seen and heard. The masks we wear may have served a purpose, but they are not who we truly are. As we navigate the complexities of our inner landscapes, may we find solace in the knowledge that true healing begins with the courage to confront our deepest wounds and embrace the fullness of our humanity. Healing is not about erasing the past. It is about integrating our experiences, learning from them, and allowing them to shape us into stronger, more authentic versions of ourselves. Until next time, keep nurturing your inner light and embracing the beauty of the path you walk. May you find strength in your struggles and joy in your triumphs. And remember, even in the darkest moments, a spark of light is always waiting to be discovered. As we bid farewell to this chapter of our journey, let us carry forward the lessons learned, the wisdom gained, and the hope that burns brightly within us. For, in the end, it is not the destination that matters, but the journey itself, the journey of exploring our hearts and stepping into the light of our true potential. Thank you for joining me on today's podcast, From the Shadow to the Light. As we prepare for our next episode, Into the Abyss, we will navigate through the murky depths of trauma and adversity and uncover the moments of darkness and despair that have shaped the path of my journey.